from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And welcome to the program. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is the phone number, at Rich Valdez with an S on all of the social media. And, of course, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be here with you. Looking forward to getting into all of the hot news stories of the day with you and getting your opinions on everything. Now, I want to start off with a little bit of an aside, right? A little bit of an aside here, because there's so much news. It's kind of hard to know where to start, right? I mean, you've got the Brits that are kind of upset with Joe Biden for walking ahead of King Charles. And I guess that only happened when people noticed, because it happened and everybody turned a blind eye to it. And they were still angry at Trump when he took a few steps ahead of Queen Elizabeth, right? When he went to go visit. But we'll get into that in a little bit. U.S. taxpayers are on track to pay $1 trillion in annual interest on our national debt by the end of the year. Man, that's tough. Plenty to talk about. Anyway, I'm all over the place. Forgive me. I want to talk about several things. One of the things we're going to talk about is the book, Lost in Trans Nation. That's a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness of transgender adolescence. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Plus, we're also going to talk about the big NATO meeting today, right? Today was the big NATO meeting, and the former United States representative to NATO, United States Air Force Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired. He's going to join us, and we're going to get to that. Plus, we're going to get to your calls and more. Then at 11:30 my time, right? So halfway through hour number 2 at the bottom of the hour, Dennis Kneale, you remember him from CNBC. We're going to talk about the bank failures, because Bank of America, goodness, opening fake accounts, charging illegal junk fees. What is going on? I remember a time when people wanted to get with Bank of America because they were the biggest game in town and they figured can't go wrong. But you know what? I didn't jump on the bandwagon, not because of wisdom or anything else, just because I didn't feel like changing banks from the small bank I was with. And guess what? My small bank was terrific. They have done the right thing by me time and time again. So we're going to get to that. Now, I want to dig into a couple of the headlines today, because Zelensky lashed out at NATO leaders, same ones that send him billions of dollars. And he did that because of, the talk that's going on right now, where, some are on board with Ukraine becoming a part of NATO, others are not. Some are on board with the European Union inclusion, et cetera, others are not. So we're going to get to that, like I said, at the top of the next hour. But right now, I want to just recap a little bit of what happened today, in particular with Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Because Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, there's a lot of talk about whether he lied to Congress. Now, in my opinion, it seems pretty open and shut. He definitely did. He lied to Congress when he said that the U.S. Attorney David Weiss could prosecute anybody he wanted. But it seems that Merrick Garland had that control. Now, again, if he maintains that he had no control, then Mr. Weiss had full reign over this. But it seems to me that that's just not the case. And that's based on the facts. But I'll let you decide. Listen to Kevin McCarthy on Capitol Hill with reporters today, asking the question of, did Merrick Garland lie to Congress when he said David Weiss could prosecute anybody. Listen to this.
I think what we have to first do is bring those people into the room, find out who's telling the truth and who's not. Did Garland lie to the American public and lie to Congress and Senate when he said that David Weiss could be a special prosecutor, that David Weiss, if he wanted to prosecute anybody in any jurisdiction, he could do it? Now, why is something said differently inside a meeting of 6 people? Why was the document, when the whistleblower about at the time Vice President Biden, the 1023, why wasn't that provided to the IRS? There's a lot of questions here that continue to rise from every time the more you look at it. I think for the American public, you should look at all of it. I never prejudge or anything else, but when you have questions like this, I think they need to be answered. I don't predetermine what the answers are, but I think the American public has a right to know.
Obviously, the American public has a right to know. And thankfully, we're having that conversation. It's a conversation we need to have. People need to know what's going on. People in the government need to know that it's we, the people, that hold them accountable and not the other way around. Crazy the way things are happening these days. But that's where we are. And I think McCarthy is spot on. Now, he didn't stop there. He went on to continue his comments saying that U.S. Attorney Weiss wrote a letter which raises even more questions and concerns. Listen to this.
This is saying that Garland is correct.
Weiss has not come before us and talked to us. Weiss wrote a letter that even raises more questions. You had 6 people in a room who some are saying something different, that have no philosophical bent one way or another, concerned about equal justice, coming before the Ways and Means Committee. And it's interesting now, even that it wasn't just said in the meeting, they took notes and they sent it back. It was so questionable when he said that he couldn't become a special prosecutor that he got asked the question back because the individual knew how important that was. So I would think even you as a reporter would have that question as well. And I think everybody in the American public does as well.
I would think even you as a reporter. Kudos to McCarthy for taking shots, very veiled shots. Even you as a reporter. Now, again, I'm sure he meant that in the most innocuous way. I took it as, even you, a lowly reporter, even you, a reporter with an IQ of 10, right? That's how it came across to me. And good. It should be. I mean, there's too many people out there that don't take things seriously. And McCarthy went on to ask about what Weiss has to hide.
Weiss has said he can't talk about it because it's an ongoing investigation.
Well, he's going to have to.
And what are you guys going to do to compel them? Are you going to...
I think you cannot sit back and hide behind and have an attorney general say one thing. You say something else in private. What do you have to hide? Wouldn't you, first and foremost, why would you wait so long to respond even? If you knew this was a question, if you knew because of the attorney that you were, because you worked for the attorney general and others, and that it would rise to such a constitutional question, why wouldn't you step out the first day and say, I got nothing to hide, let's talk about what was said. This was right or this was wrong. Why do you want to mince words inside a letter itself and be delayed? That just raises more issues.
Wow, McCarthy's using a lot of interesting words here. Constitutional question. These are things that rise to the level of the Supreme Court when you have a constitutional question. So we shall see how this goes. But listen, I agree with them 100%. They're the ones that are playing games. They're the ones that are trying to contort things to their benefit instead of just calling them as they are, as they occur. So we're going to see how this continues to play out. But to me, he's doing a very good job at illustrating to the American people that this isn't always on the up and up, right? It just really isn't. People might think it is. It may look that way, but when you look a little closer upon further examination, not so fast. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about why there is such an emphasis across our country on transgender youth. I think the response from our guests is going to surprise you. Plus, you're welcome to join the conversation. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
God is trans!
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 All right. Again, if you listened to the program yesterday, you heard that clip of audio. It was a protest, or actually a parade, a LGBTQ event in the United Kingdom, where participants who then became demonstrators were shouting and chanting that God is trans. And of course, I think this is definitely going to rub lots of people the wrong way. And of course it did. And it begs the question, what is going on? Like, why are we in the madness that we're in? There are things going on left and right with children being put on hormone medication, puberty blockers and whatnot. You've got all sorts of things happening, and nobody can really explain why this is happening en masse the way it is. We all have ideas, but we haven't gotten to the bottom of it. And I think this is fascinating to me. It really is. And that's why I wanted to bring in Dr. Miriam Grossman. She's an MD, board certified in psychiatry, and in the subspecialty of child and adolescent psychiatry. She's the author of Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness. Dr. Grossman, welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Great to be with you.
My pleasure. Thank you for making the time and staying up late with us. This is a topic we frequent on our program here because it's relatively new, right? While it may be around for a couple of decades, most people haven't been through this. Most people haven't had to, really don't have an answer, I should say, to why we're constantly talking about transgenderism every single day in the news. And it's a real thing. You know I have children. One's about to be 18, the other one about to be 22. And I can tell you that my daughter, who graduated high school this year, she pointed out in her yearbook, she made it a point to show me, look, this is so-and-so who's now Phoebe. And they won most change since freshman year. And she was saying, good for her. It's obviously a big change. But she was saying, the rest of us that made just different changes, didn't have a shot because this person changed their gender. And I thought, yeah, I get it. I understand how difficult that might be for some people. But the grand scheme of things is, how did we get here? Right? How did we get to this place? Of course, you've written the book Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness. So walk us through a little bit of the madness, Dr. Grossman.
Well, we really are in a very dire situation. Kids from a young age are being led to believe that there's such a thing as being born in the wrong body. Mm-hmm. And they are being led to believe that perhaps they are one of those mistakes. Perhaps their body is a mistake. Now, of course, there's no medical basis whatsoever for this idea of having the wrong body. No scientific basis whatsoever. It is a belief system. And I explain in my book that it is similar to a religion. Some people believe in a soul. Some people believe there's such a thing as a gender identity, which can be completely separate from your body. Now,
let me just ask a question, because I don't know a ton about this, but you're the expert here. Where does gender dysphoria, which is in the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, where does that fit in with respect to what we were talking about?
Okay, so let me just lay out the land over here with some real basic stuff.
Sure.
First of all, sex is established at conception.
Right.
We're being told left and right that sex is assigned at birth. Completely untrue. Sex, male or female, is established at conception, the moment of conception, when the sperm and the egg get together. That establishes whether the baby is going to be male or female. There are two sexes, male and female. There's no spectrum of sexes. There's no all these other possibilities that kids are being led to believe. No, there is male or female. Now, there is a tiny, tiny percentage of individuals, 0.02% of all births, in which case the baby has some sort of chromosomal abnormality or endocrine abnormality that might be discovered later on, in which there is some question about how that child would best be raised. But that is completely
And you're talking about like
different.
hermaphrodites and that type of thing?
Yes, we used to call it hermaphrodites, now called intersex, but yes, that's what I'm speaking about. But essentially, even those people, Rich, even those intersex individuals still have reproductive systems that are based around either producing eggs or sperm. There is no third kind of sex, we call it a gamete, a sex cell, either a sperm or an egg. Those are the two options. So we are a dimorphic, mammals are dimorphic, male or female, and we are mammals. So there really is no question there whatsoever. But kids are being sold this bill of goods, which, as I said, and I can't say this enough, is not based on medical science.
But let me push back here, Dr. Grossman, because I believe it's your colleagues, maybe those that take exception to what you believe and what I believe, but it's your colleagues that are out there saying things to the contrary, that are getting kids to believe that they can be this other thing, that there is this spectrum, that they can use hormones and kind of establish whatever gender they want.
Yes, it is. And that's, that's part of why I wrote this book, because I am so disturbed by this and so angry that some of my colleagues who are activists and who are pushing this radical agenda and have been so successful. Now, this did not start yesterday. And I explain in my book that it's been many years, if not decades, since the 90s, actually, when kids were first being told, yes, the kids were told as far back as in the 90s by sex educators and others that there was this thing called gender identity and that there were many different genders and that the binary of male and female was oppressive, and it was all put into a political, Marxist framework of oppression and liberation. And so, that's where it all came from. But getting back to the definition.
Well, before you get back to it, let me remind everybody the title of the book. It's called Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness. I recommend that you get a couple of copies of this, one for yourself to read and one to give away, because this is something you're not going to hear this everywhere. You might hear from me, but I'm not an MD. Dr. Miriam Grossman is an MD, board certified in psychiatry and in the subspecialty of child and adolescent psychiatry. So she literally knows exactly what she's talking about here, and I'm thrilled to have her on the program. We're coming right back with Dr. Miriam Grossman right here on America at Night with me, Rich Valdez.
Listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, that is the sound of a chant. We're here, we're queer, and we're coming from your children. It's about 2 weeks ago at a Pride event in New York City. And it seems that they are coming for our children, and not just to talk about Pride and Pride Month, but no, to erase the idea that they can be or are what they were born and that they can become anything they want. Dr. Miriam Grossman is our guest. She is the author of the book Lost in Trans Nation, A Child Psychiatrist's Guide Out of the Madness. Dr. Grossman is a board-certified psychiatrist specializing in the subspecialty of child and adolescent psychiatry. Dr. Miriam Grossman, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Rich.
It's my pleasure.
I want to explain to your audience why I wrote this book. For the past few years, I have been seeing these kids, these distressed kids who are unhappy about their bodies, as well as their parents. And I have to tell you that in 35 years of practicing as a child psychiatrist, I have never seen this kind of devastation that happens in families. Okay, when your child suddenly comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, I'm not your son, I'm your daughter. I want to be called by this new girl's name. I want to be called by female pronouns. And in fact, at school, they've been doing that for the past months. You just haven't been told because I wasn't ready to tell you. I'm using the girls' bathroom, and I'm asking you to please make an appointment at a gender clinic so that I can stop my puberty and be placed on estrogen. Now, I have heard from hundreds of parents who have gone through this, and they are blindsided by it. They didn't expect it. They may have known, I have a kid who has some issues. I have a kid who's on the autism spectrum or who has anxiety, but they never expected this. No family is immune. And after seeing what I've seen in these past few years, I felt that I had to go out there and reach parents before this hits their household. I have to reach them and give them the education that they need to understand this, to educate them, and to give them the tools so that they can immunize their family against these ideas. And that's what I did in the book. It's filled with practical information, such as conversations that you can have with your child, and also conversations that you need to have with your pediatrician, with your guidance counselor at school. You need to be proactive. I'm talking to parents now. You need to be doing these things beforehand so that you are not ambushed and you know what you're talking about, you're certain about your beliefs, and you won't have that nagging feeling, well, maybe I should listen to the gender expert, and maybe I should be calling my son by a girl's name and using girls' pronouns and get him on estrogen, because that is not what you should be doing.
You know, Doc, I'm listening to what you're saying, and I love it. But I'm going to tell you, I'm the dad of two young girls, 18 and 22 now. And I can tell you, I remember a couple of years ago taking my little one to the doctor, pediatrician. Our regular person was out. We had a different person. And very nice, but I noticed at one point she was saying, oh, Dad, can you bring this document to the front desk? I forgot to bring it. Now, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm a Puerto Rican kid from Brooklyn. I know when somebody's trying to get me, but I was being polite. So I did. I brought the paper over, and in my head I was saying, this lady wanted me out of the room. I don't know why she wanted me out of the room, but she did. And I come back, and she's like, oh, can you wait outside? I said, absolutely not. I'm not waiting outside. You have my kid in there, and she's 12. I don't want this to happen. Now, she tried to make it like, well, you're dad, and you should be outside. And I said, no, absolutely not. I called my ex-wife. I'm divorced now. And I said, look, I don't like what's going on. This lady's in there, and she's with our little girl, and I don't know what she's saying. So I asked my kid what she's saying, and she said she was asking me a bunch of questions about sexual activity and blah, 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 and if how I identify and all that. And again, I bring it back to some of your colleagues, right? This stuff happens when you're at the doctor. And my perfectly, I'm going to say, for the lack of a better word, my perfectly normal kid goes to the doctor, and then the doctor starts putting things in her head, saying, do you identify as this? How do you feel about that? What are you doing with this? What are you doing with that? And when you're sounding the alarm about your colleagues and about this big issue, and you've written the book on this, literally, what advice do you have for parents that are in a situation like that where they're being pushed out?
You take your kid and you run in the opposite direction and you never look back.
That's what I did.
And you find a pediatrician that isn't going to do that. Okay,
exactly
this is coming from the top. This is coming from the leadership of the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I explain in the book how all these medical organizations, these mainstream medical organizations, have been captured by this radical agenda. It's not necessarily the rank and file pediatricians that make these decisions, these proclamations that come out of the organizations, the policy statements that are supporting these, medicalization of kids and the whole ideas of being born in the wrong body. No, these are what's happened in the organizations, as I explain in the book, and it's all mainstream medical and educational organizations, is that small, militant, and aggressive groups of people with an agenda who want to see the organization moved in a certain direction, they simply are able to take over.
This is really big.
You're mentioning, it's very big. Yes, it is.
Because people think, right, when they think if they go to that one-off doctor who's part of a vocal minority that says, oh, no, because your kid is this or because they can pick whatever they want or whatever. It's not the norm. It's not the majority. There's plenty of professionals like you that are out there writing books about this saying the exact opposite. But this small vocal minority seems to be getting all the action.
No. What happens here, what I'm trying to explain here is that when you go to your pediatrician, the rank and file pediatrician, I'm so sorry, someone's calling me. I'm just ignoring it. So from the top of the American Academy of Pediatrics, pediatricians are going to be instructed, this is what you're to do with your patients. So it is coming from the top of the American Academy of Pediatrics, but that academy has been captured. And I explain in the book, I have interviews with pediatricians who have tried without success to disagree, to dissent, to have debate on these issues, and they are simply silenced. They are not given the microphone. And then these organizations go out and they say, oh, there's a medical consensus, like our Admiral Dr. Rachel Levine, who keeps on saying to parents, oh, there's, every major medical organization, there's a consensus among medical professionals. No, there is no consensus. What there is a debate. And one side is not allowing the other side to be heard. And so parents are under the false impression that there's a consensus and they need to just go with this narrative and they need to go with the program unless and if they don't, it's going to harm their child. And that's how they get the parents to agree to these medical interventions. And these interventions, mind you, can be permanent, can lead to sterilization, destructive, and there is no evidence, Rich. There's no evidence that these interventions are beneficial in the long term. That's what I want people to know. So there
Let me
are
ask you
options.
something, Doc, because I agree with you. It sounds crazy to me. All I am is a guy with kids, right? And if you told me my kid doesn't feel like a girl, she feels like a boy, we're going to, have a double mastectomy and go through hormones, I would say you're out of your mind. Give her some estrogen, help her feel like a girl. Why don't we do that?
Because this inane gender affirmation care has taken over our medical system here in the United States. Other countries have done differently. If you lived with your daughters in Sweden or Norway or Finland or Britain, it would be very difficult for one of them to get puberty blockers or go on testosterone because those countries have done an in-depth analysis of all the research that exists, and they have come out and decided that no, what these kids need is psychotherapy. But in this country, we're far from being there. And the politics in this country, we do have 19 states so far who, with legislation that prohibits these interventions, but that still leaves a heck of a lot of states where you can get this kind of affirming, quote unquote, care.
Right.
Now, let me point out that the term affirming care is Orwellian. And what I mean by that is that when you're affirming the opposite sex identity, this impossible opposite sex synthetic persona that the child wants so much, it means that you are denying their physical reality.
Right.
You're
Who they
denying
really are.
their reality. Now, parents have to represent reality, and they have to represent common sense. And so the overarching message of my book to parents is trust your gut. Do not take your child to a gender therapist. Run the other direction from pediatricians that are telling you to leave the room. Because what they want to do when you leave the room is talk about sexuality, gender, and all sorts of things that you may not want your child to be hearing about.
Doc, let's hang on right there. Dr. Miriam Grossman, MD. She is a board-certified child psychiatrist. She's the author of Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. I recommend you get 2 copies of this book, one for yourself, one for a neighbor, friend, anybody else. Trust me, everybody needs to know about this. This is a huge problem, bigger than many of us think. We're going to come right back and wrap up with Dr. Grossman straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez, our phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Our guest is Dr. Miriam Grossman, board-certified psychiatrist specializing in child and adolescent psychiatry, and the author of the book, Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist's guide out of the madness. Dr. Grossman, as we wrap up here, I guess, final thought to you. With respect to what parents need to do. Obviously, you've told them, take your kid and run, and I think that is really good advice. But what else can parents do to fight the onslaught of this new ideology?
Well, look, I wrote this book because I don't want any more parents contacting me in distress about their kids. I get at least half a dozen emails every single day from families that are going through this.
Wow.
So to answer your question, yeah, emails saying, my daughter's going for surgery tomorrow. What can I do? It's, I have patients that have been castrated, young men who don't have genitals. This is what's going on. Now, what I'm going to say is I want people to buy my book and read it so that they're not another family that is frantically running around and trying to get help from therapists like myself who are non-affirming is what we're called, but basically we are reality-based.
Right.
And we are anti-medicalization of these young kids. What they need is psychotherapy. They need to be taken, their internet and social media use needs to be parents need to be in control of that. And I have an appendix in my book written by an expert, because I know nothing about technology, but written by someone who can instruct parents on getting control of their kids' internet and social media use. You need to be vigilant. What is your kid doing? Who are they talking to? Who are they hanging around with? What's going on in school? What are they being exposed to? Are they joining clubs in school that you don't know about that are going to promote this ideology? So you need to really get smart. You don't need a PhD. My book is accessible to everybody. Know what's going on and protect your family.
Wow. Yeah, I appreciate your passion and the fact that you wrote the book. I think there's very few of your colleagues out there with the courage to do what's right, even when they know it's right. And I know this because many of them have called me and told me, look, I'll tell you something, but I can't go on the air. And I realize that it comes at a personal cost to do that and to tell the truth. What type of backlash have you faced for standing up to the, I'm going to call them the woke mob within your profession?
Well, I mean, starting many years ago when I wrote a book, I was a psychiatrist at UCLA in the Student Counseling Center there. And I wrote a book called Unprotected about the politics in my profession. The political correctness is what we used to call it then, and how it harms students, especially young women. And, well, the fallout from that book was that basically from one day to the next, I was shunned. I was shunned by my colleagues that I had worked with for 11 years. I had an excellent reputation. Everyone loved me. But when that book came out, people stopped talking to me. They wouldn't refer patients to me. Right. Eventually, I had to leave UCLA. My life was made quite miserable there. And I have had some difficulty applying for jobs and being rejected, and I know why that is. But that's okay. That's okay because I can sleep at night. Right. And I know that I'm doing the best for my patients, and I know that I am following the oath that I took many years ago when I graduated from medical school to do no harm.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key, right? Do no harm. And it seems this Hippocratic oath has morphed into doing no harm means let's turn someone into something that they're not. Folks, Dr. Miriam Grossman, MD, board certified in psychiatry and adolescent psychiatry, child psychiatry, the author of Lost in Trans Nation, a child psychiatrist guide out of the madness. Dr. Grossman, let everybody know where they can get a copy of your book or two.
Well, all the regular places, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. I also suggest going to my website, which is miriamgrossmanmd.com. You can watch my testimony that I provided in Congress last month on this issue. And there's many other things there as well. I'm on Twitter, Miriam_Grossman. And I'm a woman on a mission. And some people tell me to just calm down and not to get so upset over it. But I'm telling you, when I see what's going on, I'm not going to calm down. I'm going to go out there and do what I have to do. And that's what any decent person would do.
Amen to that. I hope you continue to do what you have to do, and I hope you make some disciples along the way with some of your colleagues and get them on board and create a movement because our future, our children are depending on the leadership that you're providing in this space. Thank you, Dr. Grossman, for being with us, for educating us, and for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You're welcome. Folks, we're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So NATO says that it's going to invite Ukraine to join when the conditions are met. Biden says, yeah, that's going to be when the war is over. Say what? What is he talking about? That's absolute insanity. We're going to get into that with the former United States representative to NATO, General Blaine Holt. He's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, by the way, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Our telephone number, if you want to join our late-night national conversation, feel free to do so, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to talk about a number of things tonight. We've had an amazing conversation in the first hour. Here in hour number 2, we're going to talk about NATO and all things foreign policy. But I want to, again, direct your attention to the comments coming from President Biden and those that are, involved in what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and NATO right now. And it's fascinating to me to see what's coming out of their mouths, right? You've got Biden saying he's very pleased by Turkey's move to advance Sweden's NATO membership bid. Listen to this.
You made all the more historic by the agreement you reached yesterday and the addition of Sweden and how you're going to proceed. I want to thank you for your diplomacy and your courage to take that on. And I want to thank you for your leadership.
Now, of course, Biden's not as enthusiastic when it comes to Ukraine's membership bid to join NATO because he says, well, we've got to continue this war. In many words, at least that's my understanding of what he's saying. He's in effect saying, look, we've got to continue to do this, and we'll talk about it later once the conditions are met. And the conditions, of course, are finishing the war and spending more money. I don't understand the purpose of that. Again, I'm adding to this. I'm embellishing a tad, but I don't think I'm off base here. And, of course, the Turkish president, let's see if I can get this right, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he says through an interpreter that he's looking forward to working more closely with the United States. Listen to this.
Today's meeting with you within the margin of the NATO summit is the first step forward. Our meetings prior to this were mere warm-ups, but now we are initiating a new process.
All right, so that's the new process that Erdogan is talking about, and Biden seems to be very gung-ho to say whatever he feels like doing and act a different way, obviously not having Ukraine's back in the way I think that he should. And I want to get to the bottom of that, of course, and who better than the former United States representative to NATO, retired Brigadier General from the United States Air Force, Blaine Holt. Blaine Holt, General, sir, welcome to the program.
Oh, my gosh, Rich, I'm so happy to return to your show. It's always great to be on with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. I really do, because I think, I love to interview generals because you guys have this, I'm going to call it magical, but it's a very astute ability to go beyond politics and deliver a response that's kind of mission critical, right? Because that's your job, ultimately. You have to kind of navigate the politics, but steer clear of the politics to do what's right and what's necessary. And I think you get the best analysis that way. But we have the NATO shindig, I'm going to call it, this week. And I just, I don't know what to make of anything anymore. I think Biden seems like he's just here, there, and everywhere. Zelensky, I can't trust him as far as I can throw him. I can't stand Putin. I don't have anybody I could like in this fight. Help us make sense. What's going on?
Right. So I have to start out by saying this particular NATO summit, and I've been a part of a couple of them in the planning, not a scripted event. This is the most consequential NATO summit in NATO's history. Absolutely no question about that. And why wouldn't we think that? Because really the spire of World War III is hanging over our heads. We've never heard the word nuclear so much as we have in the last year. And we know we live in a dangerous world. And beyond NATO's reach, you've got China, Iran, North Korea. Our adversaries are looking at our weakness being projected globally, and they are sharpening knives. And so here we come to a summit where the final deals, they're usually brokered months in advance, so everybody knows how to play their cue cards. No. 1 a.m. before the summit, you've got Turkey and the United States hammering out what looks like a pretty substantial, on its surface, looks like a victory for the Biden administration in terms of getting Turkey on sides for Sweden's entry into the alliance, getting comfortable with an eventual membership in Ukraine, with whatever that looks like, and a host of other things. Now, a lot of people have been hearing in the mainstream press today that, oh yeah, and Turkey gets some F-16s for this. That would be a silly notion. Yes, they'll get their F-16s, but the bigger deal is Turkey wants a path to EU membership. And it looks like that pathway has now been gilded. If Tayyip Erdogan is going to turn his back on Russia for a second, it means he's got to score big time. And what that means is the Turkish prize is to be a member of the EU. And it looks like they're going to get a path to that. It also looks like Turkish citizens very soon will be able to come and go very freely in the European Schengen zone. And that's a very big deal to the economy of Turkey. So the stage is set. Now, we haven't even touched the Ukraine piece, but I'll throw it back to you but I will tell you, this is not a small NATO summit. This has been a very big deal.
So I'll put this out there. I think, and I'm going to make it political for just a second, but really I want to bring it back to the geopolitical analysis that you're offering. Recently, we heard President Trump in a statement say, I could end the war between Ukraine and Russia in 48 hours, something like that, right? And I love him, and I believe he's right? I think he can harness the leverage that's there because everybody wants something. And it just takes that one leader that can bring everybody to the table and say, let's do this for you and this for you and this for you and make everything go away. And again, maybe I'm oversimplifying because I'm a radio guy in the United States. But I think when you have the I don't know, the full faith and nuclear arsenal of the United States, you can do that. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, but it's more than that. When President Trump says he can do that, and at the risk of sounding political, I'll just analyze it, with my best objectivity. President Trump proved over 4 years that he carried a big stick, wasn't going to use it unless he had to. And so you need strength, you need credibility, and you need respect. And he engenders those things. He has engendered those things. This is the guy who went over to North Korea and said, I'll just walk over and talk to him. And his, much to the establishment's great. You can't do that. We never do that. And it's like, what if we did? And then you get the Abraham Accords, and you really start to see bandages put on some of the world's most intractable problems. And even China comes to heel with a marvelous trade deal that's now all but obliterated. But when he says, and, in his bombastic style, when he says, I knock this war out in about 24 hours. Yeah, no, he probably could, because right away Russia would say, okay, this guy is to be respected, doesn't play games, and we're going to have to find some way to work with him. Now, let's back it up back to Kabul, one of the greatest failures in United States history. This is what transmitted to the world, we're weak and we're open for business, so let us know what you want to do, and starts the tumblers for the countdown of what would become the Ukraine-Russia war. That war was deterrable. We had every lever in our hands to keep that war from happening. And even still, a year and a few months into this war, where is the State Department on any of the diplomatic options? In fact, I would say the most diplomatic energy I've seen spent during the entire war comes from Richard Haas, the former president of the Council on Foreign Relations, with some statesmen who start on what we call a track 2 diplomatic track, and they're talking to Lavrov, and they're trying to find some off-ramp here. And I couldn't be more proud of CFR in this case and Richard Haas in going and taking that step, because if you examine what's happening on the battlefield, you know that we're just going to keep having killing fields with a nuclear power in play if we don't find that off ramp. And so that's what this is about, and that's why Ukraine didn't get their immediate membership. They can't invoke Article 5 and say, okay, we're all at World War III. No. That's actually not responsible, and that's not what Americans expect. So in the rare instance where I agree with President Biden's policy, this is not the time for NATO accession, but it could be in the future. And they actually gave him a Ukraine-NATO Council, which will meet starting tomorrow. That's a very big deal for NATO. And so Zelensky, instead of being very upset, should go home saying, look, we got a victory and we've got a path. And he should see it that way.
Speaking of Zelensky, I have a quick clip, and I want you to respond to it, and I think you might have already in part, but we've got Volodymyr Zelensky telling a crowd that he came to Lithuania with faith in a NATO that doesn't hesitate. Listen to this.
Сьогодні я поїхав дорогу сюди з вірою у рішення, з вірою у партнерів, з вірою у сильне НАТО.
Do you think that he's pushing too hard and that he should take the win that you just mentioned and be graceful about it? Or should he continue to keep the pressure on, being that that's the way for him to go in order to maintain, safety and security for his nation?
Yeah, it's not so simple. I mean, it's very simple for you and I in a calm environment to describe, wow, this guy really lost his cool. He probably should have played it better. He showed a lot of emotion on a stage where he probably would have been better served not doing that. Those things would be true. However, let's put ourselves in his shoes. He is in the fight of his life. And for him personally, he's got to win or there is no tomorrow. And what he's going, I am certain that he got his team riled up about, look, we've got a path to NATO coming. I just got to go to Vilnius and seal the deal. He's not coming back with the deal that he thought he was going to. I think that what we're going to find is it's not going to be fatal for him, but he's going to have some domestic politics problems because this nation has just been grinding in this meat grinder, and everybody's going to go, well, how much longer? What's going to happen? When are we going to find our way there? And are they moving the goalpost on us? So he's going back to a domestic political situation while he's fighting a war that's very tough. I don't envy the man for the stresses that he's under. At the same time, statesmen have to be statesmen, and it was absolutely, utterly predictable what the alliance would do in this case. And so I think he should have anticipated that. The Ukraine NATO Council or the NATO Ukraine Council, whatever you want to call it, that's a win. That's actually from a guy who's a former NATO technocrat. I will tell you that's a win. That's actually a serious deal. That's not a light thing because they will create an access plan that gets there, but it can't happen until we get the off-ramp to this war.
Right. And again, I think that's kind of what Biden was saying. I think you just said it a little bit nicer. It sounded to me like, we'll get to that later when we're done having the war. It seems like we got to put an end to the war. And I guess it's a semantical difference. But folks, we're on with retired General Blaine Holt, United States Air Force Brigadier General and the former United States representative to NATO. And we're going to continue this conversation straight ahead. Plus, I welcome your calls, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There's never been a stronger message from NATO at any time, both when it comes to the political message on the path forward for membership and the concrete support from NATO allies, military support, but also the practical support on how to ensure full interoperability. If you look at other membership processes, there have not been time lines for those processes. They are conditions-based, has always been.
So it's an unprecedented time in NATO history. There's a lot of very high-stakes game right now with all of the players. That, by the way, that clip was of NATO General Secretary Jens Stoltenberg and our guest, General Blaine Holt. General, I want to, and you've spoken about this quite a bit already, but I want to get your take on the other people that are involved here, right? So we're talking about Ukraine, we're talking about NATO. What about Russia, right? I know Russia has had, I don't think we've had a chance to talk about this. I've talked about it quite a bit, with the whole controversy with Prigozhin and Putin. Quick story, and I know we're limited on time here, but I was out earlier for dinner and bumped into somebody who was a former USSR person, and I was at dinner with someone that's a former State Department person, and the conversation circled around what's at play, right, with Prigozhin and whether this thing was theatrics or not. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it could be theatrics. The one thing I know we do know is that we don't know. And that is very, it sounds like Washington, D.C. gobbledygook, but it's very true. Here's what I think happened. Prigozhin is a very emotional player, and they went through a lot in Bakhmut in the campaign, and he certainly had an axe to grind with Shoigu and Gerasimov, the top generals in the Russian military, about not getting supplied while he was fighting his campaign. So he wanted to mount a campaign to go after them and to try to thread the needle between his allegiance to Putin and his ire and anger for the Russian military. Well, he thought he had a lot of people on side. He didn't. He got as far as Rostov on Don, and his loyalty base melted with every mile that they had on their way to Moscow. Putin is pretty shrewd. He didn't go to kill him to go, and wipe out a whole bunch of people just to create the next attempt on him. What he understood was he's probably got a lot more disloyal players on the team, and I think he's keeping a lot of these people alive just to go find out who's loyal, who's not loyal as he goes through this. Now, that doesn't take away from the Russian army being very effective in their defense of the counteroffensive from Ukraine. So we should not sit there and say, well, Russia's finished. We should just say that Putin's under a lot of stress and pressure as well. But now what they're watching and what could really be the pressure point on Putin is you just had two more countries join NATO and created another 830 miles of NATO border on the Russian border. How is your war going? And he's going to have to answer for those questions. The thing that I'm concerned about is we need a strategy to understand how to deal with Russia, a nuclear power, and not put them into a box where they've got to throw a Hail Mary pass. So we talked about the counteroffensive and the Ukrainians will go get Crimea and we'll be happily ever after. Do we really think the Russians are not going to go to some very interesting forms of weaponry, which they certainly have, if something like that were to happen? So you got to watch for what you wish for, because you might get it. Right. This is a very dangerous war with Russia, who they are. And not to say that Putin is rock solid on top of his game. He's not. These are two fighters who are in the 15th round, bloodying each other with nothing left on the table. And we just don't, and we don't want it to go to the next place, which is far worse. And while we throw all the money and weapons at this thing, there's China, there's Iran, there's North Korea. Gotta watch that.
Boy. General Blaine Holt, senior Newsweek contributor and co-founder of Restore Liberty. You see him on Newsmax. You hear him on our show all the time. I thank you for being with us. We got to do it again really soon. There's never enough time. General, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Take care, Rich.
You bet. Folks, more to come straight ahead. We're going to continue our conversation. What's going on with the banks? Why is Bank of America faking jacks? We're going to get to that right now. Don't go anywhere.
He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
So I'm looking at an article here, CNN Business reporting that Bank of America is accused of opening fake accounts and charging illegal junk fees. Yep. Federal regulators are saying that they found that Bank of America harmed customers by double dipping on fees, withholding credit card rewards, and opening fake accounts, all of which are violations of various consumer financial protection laws. As a result, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered Bank of America to pay more than $100 million to customers and $90 million in penalties. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency also ordered Bank of America to pay $60 million in fines. The bank is the second largest in the United States, serving 68 million individuals and small businesses. Crazy, right? And we remember this happened not too long ago at Wells Fargo. A couple of years back, with the bank opening millions of accounts without their customers' authorization. So this comes on the heels of the other day we heard about different, potential for bank failures, and some saying it won't happen, others saying be careful. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, to me, it seems like the writing's on the wall, but I don't want to jump the gun. I want to bring in an expert. Dennis Kneale, you know him from CNBC. He has been on TV for years. You also have seen his podcast or heard his podcast on Ricochet. Dennis Kneale, welcome to the program, sir.
Good to talk to you, Rich. Hope you're well tonight.
I am. Thank God I have my voice back. About a week ago, I had bronchitis and I had no voice. And that's like, breaking the 11th commandment in the radio game.
Well, especially for a guy with the hours you got on radio, man. So, yeah.
Brother. But thank you for staying up late and being with us and trying to make sense of this stuff because, it's all Greek to me. Let's talk about this. So it seems like, is this, let me ask it this way, is this a repeat of what we saw with Wells Fargo where they were opening up the fake phony fraud accounts so that they could look better to their investors? Or is there more to this with Bank of America?
So first of all, let's just say terrible, bad dog, Bank of America. The very fact that you're going to have to pay more than $100 million to customers means that you owed them that, and you ripped them off by $100 million. So, okay, bad. Let's also understand, though, that this is, I think, nowhere near the level of pervasiveness and scammy fake accounts that we saw at Wells Fargo. In the old days, the long-distance business, when you had AT&T and Sprint and MCI, these old brands that no one will remember now, they had this thing called cramming. And that was where the long-distance accounts were loading up your account with new services. Oh, you want call waiting? That's an extra $2. Oh, you want, unlimited directory assistance? That's an extra $1. So they did this cramming, loading up services without the person even realizing it, right? Well, now banks are doing it, and Wells Fargo did it to the nth degree. So along comes this bank, Bank of America, and they think, it's just that you look at the statement and the regulators say that they harmed hundreds of thousands of consumers over a period of several years across multiple product lines and services. So, Rich, that means that in several years, you add it all up and you got fewer than 1 million in customers when they've got 68 million clients. I mean, and you're going to pay $220 million in penalties, et cetera. But this is a bank that had $27 billion in earnings last year. So what this really is, Rich, is a slap on the wrist to make the regulators look good. Now, there's this agency. It's called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They're here to protect you, and they were created after the meltdown of 08, 09. But the thing about this CFPB, and we've talked about this on What's Bugging Me, my podcast, the thing about it, we talked about with a lawyer about this, is that they're basically an unconstitutional agency, Rich. They have a chief but no appointed board. They don't get their money from Congress. They get it from the Federal Reserve. So they come in, they make a big deal. Look what we've made them do. But meanwhile, there's ripoffs going on all over the place of all other kinds, and they're missing them because they just want the headlines for Green to Heal, Bank of America with $100 million, return to customers when Bank of America got $2.7 billion in earnings last year.
Wow. So this is smoke and mirrors, and you're saying it could have been worse, but it's not.
Sure, and far more pervasive. And probably now there's a template here, what you do if you're a regulator, right? You got this one. Now they're going to go to the next big bank and the next one and the next one, and they'll just hold them up for money. By the way, here's the thing also, Rich, $100 million to customers. I like that. $90 million in penalties to the Consumer Financial Protection Board. Oh, what? So you can go hassle small businesses? They're hassling little hardware stores for their credit accounts, right? And $60 million in fines. Why don't you just pay it all to customers? Oh, that's the other thing, though. If it's $100 million to your customers and you have 68 million customers, it's like $1.50 a piece or $1.30 a piece. So really, I think this is for those headlines, and that's unfortunate. That bigger issue, though, Rich, that you worry about, that we talked about, is the banking system about to go through another crisis where smaller banks are gonna wobble. See, that's the kind of stuff the regulators.
And you know why? I guess
I'm
I'm old enough to remember First Union, Wachovia, right? Do you remember those guys? I do. Mm-hmm. And I think, are we seeing a repeat of that in slow motion?
And I'm here to tell you, no, we're going to be okay. Do not worry about that. Do not pull your money out of a bank account because of that. We're covered in very many ways, and I can explain if you want more. Now, Rich, let me just first tell you, I err on the side of being contrarian. I err on the side of being optimistic. And I was an anchor at the CNBC and Fox Business for many, many years during some of the meltdown years. And so I'll always take the other side and say, we're going to be okay. The system always fixes itself. The market fixes itself. So that's one reason I've got this bias. But the other thing is, overall, sure, is there going to be consolidation of banks and some little guys get eaten by the big guys? Yeah, and that always happens. And that often makes things better and more efficient for the market and the way it works, number one. Number two, it turns out right now on every account, if you have less than $250,000 in your bank's account there, and it's an FDIC insured bank, even if that bank goes belly up, you are covered. What happened in the Silicon Valley bank meltdown was you had these rich fat cats and Silicon Valley startup founders and VC firms, and they had way over that $250K limit in their individual accounts, millions. And they realized, oh my gosh, I'd lose this if they close this bank. I've heard rumors that it's a little wobbly. And so they took out the equivalent of, I don't know, almost 60 or 100 billion overnight. That caused that bank to wobble and fall. But that's not going to happen this time around. I think that people are, once you've had one or two or three failures, bing, 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 investors have a way now of getting ready for the next. And now it's already discounted. You're going to be okay.
All right, Dennis Kneale, I want to trust you. Folks, Dennis Kneale, he's the host of What's Bugging Me. Great podcast. Make sure you check it out, subscribe, click the little bell so you know when new episodes are coming out. We're going to continue with him straight ahead because I want to continue to tug on this thread a little bit. I don't know that I trust the banks as much as Dennis Kneale does, but we're going to continue our conversation right now. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
You saw the budget that the president wasn't going to get anywhere, but you saw it. It was almost, a lot of tax hikes. Do you have any problems with any of this, with what you're watching? Are you allowed to say if you do as a Democrat? Or do you think, why do you think the country...
It's always good to see you on a Monday.
It's always what?
Good to see you on a Monday. You're going right in. I like that. It's a simple question. You say that you're a blue dog. You say that you're a problem solver. Are you fully behind Bidenomics and what we've seen? Well, I think if you look at where the economy is right now, in terms of given you're coming out of COVID, giving out of a supply chain strain, and look at the numbers that have been produced, those are positive. Listen, inflation is slowing. We still have challenges there, but it's down 11 months in a row. 2-year low. You've got 13 million new jobs under this administration, 200,000 new jobs in the jobs report in June. Unemployment remains around 3.6%. So the bottom line is there's been good progress. Got the Inflation Reduction Act and obviously the debt deal we just did in a bipartisan way, the debt ceiling deal, which will reduce the deficit by 1.5 trillion over 10. Those are all good, positive steps.
All right, that's Joe Kernan. He's a host on CNBC in a conversation with Congressman Josh Gottheimer. Dennis Kneale, our guest, former CNBC host himself, a host of What's Bugging Me on the Ricochet Podcast Network. Dennis Kneale, I can't help but think that Congressman Gottheimer is kind of grasping for straws here. Well, I'm not saying he's lying, because I think what he's saying is, factually accurate, at least a good part of it. But it doesn't seem to me that we're in any better shape economically. And I would venture to say most people who are, buying something at the store or filling their gas tank or anything like that are going to have something negative to say about the economy. What say you?
It's quite interesting, isn't it, Rich? Because what this is a what's not to like economy. When you look at the figures, the data reported and listened to by Wall Street, it looks pretty good. I mean, unemployment's pretty low. Job growth is surprisingly high. All the experts said, we're going to have a recession. We're going to have a recession. I predicted in April last year, no, we won't. There's too much money floating around from all those COVID payments, right? So it's actually surprisingly good, but not because of Bidenomics, Rich. It's surprisingly good in spite of Bidenomics. It's been able to overcome the terrible impact of Bidenomics, which has indeed been awful on the economy. Remember, we were the #1 producer of nat gas and gasoline and oil in the world. Then in came Biden. And, you don't have to crack down on everything right now. By even telling the industry we're cracking down, we don't like you, that instantly takes the testosterone out of the markets. It takes hope out of the markets for oil and energy. And suddenly our gas prices are up at the pump. That's a direct result of the market responding to Biden's policies. And then what happens, Rich, is even though it's amazing, we must have, I think it's 11 million job openings and only 5 or 6 million people technically in the workforce looking for work, okay? And so that looks awfully good. We can't have a recession if there's great job growth. But then you go to the gas pump and you say, what is this $3.50 a gallon? I was just down in South Carolina driving, for a family funeral. And you say, and that's what touches you the most. And that's what pisses you off the most.
Well, my condolences to your family. And yeah, 100%, right? I can't help but think, you got Gottheimer and so many others telling me, oh, it's fantastic. They use all these metrics. But yet I went to buy a used car a couple of days ago for my daughter. And I'm talking 2007, right? A 15-year-old, 16-year-old car. And I paid a ton of money for it. I mean, way more than I expected to, because the economy's so great, but yet we still don't have chip manufacturing going on. We still have this high premium on used cars. There's not enough new cars. And to me, it seems like whatever progress they're touting in this economy, I'm not feeling it at all.
Well, you know what? There's this bubble thing, right? Like a bubble comes over here to the left, so you press that baby down like whack-a-mole, and then the bubble then shows up somewhere else over there, in the bubbly of the water, let's say, or this. And what it's like is, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. I've just forgotten what the point was because it's 11:45 at night. Wait, we were talking about. Say it again. Oh, yeah, the used car thing. Understand? Oh, here's the bubble. All right. So interest rates going up, financing on new cars and financing on old cars are both more expensive than they used to be. So you end up seeing that, and that's a direct result of the Fed having to raise the interest rates on because it's raised borrowing rates over 20-fold in a year.
Right. Crazy.
Trying to tamp down inflation. So you go after that, and then it kind of goes up somewhere else, and suddenly it's more expensive. Look what's happened to housing sales. They've been depressed. But over the long term, I want you to know, I believe in this economy. The stock market has been showing it's up. We thought it was a bear market. It turned into a bull market a few weeks ago, meaning, in other words, it's now up instead of down, and it looks to be growing. I mean, I invested in this thing. A guy came on the podcast, what's bugging me to say, and at the end of the thing, I don't know, throwaway. I said, give me a stock pick. And he says, Fungu. I thought he was, telling me to jump.
He's cursing me out.
It's FNGU, and it's a XXX leveraged, tech thing. So I put, it was at $45. I went ahead and invested like $5,000. It's up to like $180, okay? That's how crazy the market is. The market doesn't do that if really everything's going to fall apart 6 to 9 months from now. And plus, as soon as we get into that election year, Rich, the Fed doesn't want Trump to get elected. I'm sorry. They are a political animal. They never raised rates except once in the Obama administration of 8 years. Trump comes in vowing to grow the economy faster because we're a tepid 2% growth each year on average for the previous 10 years. He comes in and the Fed raises rates 7 times in a row. Hey, welcome to office, Mr. President. So once we get into that 2024, babe, the Fed's going to either stop raising or it's going to actually start easing rates and sending it down. And stocks go up when interest rates go down. It's really weird, but it's because your money, it wants to flow to the richest place that will let it grow. And so if interest rates go down and you're paying less interest on putting your money inside a bank or inside a bond, where else should it go? And suddenly stocks say, hey, come on, let me take you for a ride. And you put it into there and the stocks go up.
So the October surprise is going to be lower interest rates, things going down to spur investment and make Biden look good.
Exactly. And it'll start happening probably with it, like the start of the second half. I'll bet you it's going to happen. And that's what the market's saying right now, I think.
Wow. All right, Dennis Kneale, stick around. Don't go anywhere. We're on with Dennis Kneale, former CNBC host, all-around great guy. He's the host of the What's Bugging Me podcast on Ricochet. Check them out. Make sure you check it out. It's an excellent show, not just because I've been on it, but because it really is a good show. And I want you to check it out while we hit this break. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Let's hit the phones very quickly with our guest, Dennis Kneale, on the line, host of the What's Bugging Me podcast. Let's go to Frank in Akron, Ohio, WINR. Frank, very quickly, go right ahead.
Thanks, Rich. Hey, we got serious problems with Beijing boys, CCP boys, and their proxy companies all around the world and trying to buy into America and buy it out from underneath it. They're going to try and collapse this financially from inside. That means they'll be having people trying to join the stock market trade to play their games in the stock market. Is that going to push everything faster to digital currency? And is that going to collapse the banks here?
I appreciate it. Dennis Kneale, is that going to push us to a digital currency and collapse the banks in the United States, China?
Well, that's a pretty bleak, dark outlook, right? And suddenly we're in an awfully dark place. So let's just cross our fingers and make sure that doesn't happen. But the caller, Frank, brings up a couple of really good points, right? I think that in the American economy, we have been asleep at the switch as the Chinese has moved in. They've bought up land, right? They've got, I think the figure somewhere around $1.7 trillion in U.S. assets that they own. They give money to economic think tanks. You know, Lou Dobbs, the former Fox anchor, feels like many economists in the U.S. have been bought off by the Chinese. If you're a big giant bank like a J.P. Morgan, you can't afford to ignore the Chinese or hurt the Chinese Communist Party. I mean, you hope to do business with them. All of business has been lusting after China's, more than 1 billion people for 20 or 30 years, even as we then let China rip us off, rip up off our intellectual property. And, the thing that worries me about China, guys, is they just don't care. They don't care however much we don't like it.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate the call. Dennis Kneale, great point, and I can't trust China further than I can throw them. But in the seconds that we have remaining, let everybody know how they could follow you, subscribe to your podcast, and keep up to speed with what you're doing.
Well, you know what? If you guys out there would check out @Dennis Kneale, okay, Kneale, and I'm shadow banned on Twitter. You can't get through, so try to break through it. And there you go. And Rich Valdez is one of the very best we have on What's Bugging Me. He's terrific. He hurls lightning bolts.
The check is in the mail. Dennis Kneale, I appreciate it, brother. Check out his podcast, What's Bugging Me, and make sure you give us a call. Open Phone America starts right now. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, @Rich Valdez on all of the social media. And there's a movie out, The Sound of Freedom. And I think it hit $40 million at the box office this weekend. It's a second week right now. Kudos to them for doing an amazing job. Movies about trafficking, right? Sex trafficking. And there's a ton of that actually is going on that we oftentimes don't hear about, don't know about, don't discuss often enough. I try to do it as often as I can here because I think it's an important issue and one that we should not allow to get, swept under the rug for whatever reason. And voila, here we are. We've got a news report coming out of Camp Pendleton. And I tell you, this is just so disheartening. Listen to this.
Investigators, the young girl who had run away before but always returned home quickly, went missing the week before.
I would also like to please ask for respect for my family.
On June 28th, the teen was located inside the barracks at Camp Pendleton. Since the base is federal property, Naval Criminal Investigative Services is handling the investigation with the assistance of the Sheriff's Department and San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force. The victim's family vowing to continue their fight for answers.
I will not rest until the whole world knows, and those responsible are held accountable and justice is served.
Camp Pendleton officials say as of Thursday, the Marine had not been charged and remains in custody of his command.
So this is a big story here, in my opinion. Right, a 14-year-old girl was found in Camp Pendleton barracks. May have met a Marine on Tinder, according to documents. The investigative documents are giving more insight into the timeline in the events that led to this 14-year-old girl who was missing for weeks before being discovered at the barracks of a junior Marine at Camp Pendleton in California. Now, the young girl at the heart of the story, she was been missing since June. Federal investigators concluded that she had been at Camp Pendleton for only about 24 hours and appeared to have met the Marine that she went to meet, whose barracks she would come to stay in. She'd only met him a day earlier. So we don't know what her status was just yet. But fascinating to see what's going on here, how these things happen, and people just oftentimes don't care enough, right? Everybody's like, yeah, I'll throw, over here, I'll do this, I'll go whatever, blah, blah, blah. But does that mean that we're actually making a difference? I don't know. I'm going to venture to say that we're not making enough of a difference in how we deal with this stuff and how much attention we pay to it. And again, when you have a 14-year-old girl that's meeting up with a Marine, we've got a problem. I mean, it's that simple. Let me give you the phone number so you could join the conversation. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let's go to Matt, Morehead City, North Carolina, WTKF. Matt, go right ahead.
Hello, Rich. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I missed the general earlier, but I would like to ask him, so I'll ask you, as I told Art, how many hundreds of billions of dollars, I'm all for helping Ukraine, don't get me wrong, but how many hundreds of billions of dollars, number one point, can America spend on Ukraine? And number 2 point is, as I told Art, it's an impeachable offense for Joe Biden to tell the world we're low on howitzer ammunition. What's your opinion, sir?
Yeah, I think, listen, if we're going to impeach Joe Biden, we should impeach him over what he's done with the border. There's been a tremendous amount of decisions and actions that he's presided over that would, in my opinion, get him to in front of an impeachment committee. That being said, I don't know that current charge would stick, but why not, right? Really, why not? I don't think the standard or the burden of proof is that high, lamentably. And I think he knows that's eventually coming, so he tries to downplay it as often as he's able to. Now, the other point, what was the other point? Forgive me.
Oh, forget about cocaine in the White House. I just swept out under the rug.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. I was talking about that earlier with somebody and thinking, what an interesting time to be alive, to see that this is an actual real thing that's occurring in our White House. I mean, that to me is amazing. You would think that if we're going to have a story like that there would be a secondary story, saying, oh, we now have the person. We know exactly who did it. We know how it got there. But nope, we find cocaine in the White House. Nobody is any wiser. Nobody knows anything. We've evacuated it, and yet still nothing, nada. I find that incredibly difficult to believe. But that's where we are, Matt, and it's a shame, to say the least.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I appreciate the call, and your guess is as good as mine. We're going to continue with your calls and more straight ahead. The phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So you have developed this reputation, I don't know if you like this or not, as a firebrand. Yeah. What do people get wrong about you or not know about you?
I think very often when I meet with colleagues or individuals that I had not met with before, they are surprised that I do my homework a lot. I know when I had my first hearing.
Are you a little nerdy and people don't know this?
Oh, no, absolutely, a little. No, I think, it's like when I had my first hearing with Michael Cohen, people were surprised that I tried to ask substantive questions, but I think that there is this idea that you somehow can't both be an effective communicator and discuss and challenge the bounds of our political imagination on substantive grounds. And I think we can do both, and I think we should do both.
All right, that's good old AOC, all out crazy. I have nicknamed her that. Our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, talking about how she does a lot of show prep, right? She does a lot of homework, so she knows what she's talking about. Now, listen, there's very few things I like more than taking shots at AOC. But I will say she is an effective communicator. She has a ton of people that are following her that, sympathize with her. And that's, she is a force to be reckoned with. She is, lamentably, right? But she says, and what people get wrong about her is that she does her homework. And she also goes on to say she has no idea if she's going to remain in Congress or not. And this is like a 5-year plan type of thing. Listen to this.
So I know you're not going to talk about 10 to 15 years from now. I don't know what I'm doing 10 to 15 years from now. But in 5 years, are you going to be in Congress?
I mean, maybe. I think I've always tried to approach my service in a way of what really I think would be best for people. And if it would be best for me to continue my service, then I will. If it's best for me to continue my service in a different form, then I hope to do that as well.
Like in the Senate, for example. So if you were not in Congress, because you're passionate about a lot of things, what would you be doing?
I think, before I ever even thought about being in Congress, I've always been passionate about teaching and writing. And so maybe I would have been a teacher.
Oh, good Lord. That might have been even worse She might have more contact with young, impressionable minds than she currently does. And the again, audio clip you're listening to is all out crazy AOC, our least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens. Now, listen, here's what I'll say. AOC, very, very special. Does she know if she'll be in Congress? Look, I don't know if she'll be in Congress either. I would venture to say that if she prepared herself at this point with the right people around her, she likely will. She likely will. It's, of course, it's any man's game, but it seems like we can see a repeat of history. Now, what I find remarkable here about good old AOC, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, is how flippant she is in her conversation with Jen Psaki. And it's all fluff, right? There's been other instances where she's been critical, and she sounds critical. But now it's kind of like just all fluff. It's like, no, I'm here. This is what we're doing. Everything seems so whimsical, like she doesn't really care, like she doesn't have a dog in this fight. And I think when it comes to that part of life where you're dealing with people that are either for you or against you, or that believe in what you believe or don't, I think it's important that you're able to align yourself with people that have the same beliefs. And for me, AOC is not one of those people, right? She's one of the people that she probably has more in tune with the Castros and the Castro regime than any American. And I'm not trying to take a cheap shot. I'm trying to create contrast here, that as a Democrat socialist, she fits that mold, right? Anyway, that's my thoughts on AOC. We're going to continue. Actually, we won't continue just yet. We'll continue now. I want to keep going because I have one more AOC that I want to play for you. And this one is where she's going after Ron DeSantis. And she says that Governor DeSantis is attacking schools, attacking teachers, and attacking LGBTQ plus Americans, and that his attacks have gone way too far. Saying that this is a profound political miscalculation. Listen to this.
So you're also a pretty politically astute observer. There is a presidential race that's happening right now. Donald Trump, people think, some say, is the easiest person for Joe Biden to run against. What do you think about that?
Well,
the easiest potential Republican nominee, I should say.
I think there's something to be said about that. The dynamics of these races change from day to day. I think that Governor DeSantis has made some very large critical errors, and I think he's weaker than...
What are his biggest errors, do you think, as you've watched?
Well, you can't out-Trump Trump, right? And that's what he's really been trying to do. His attacks on teachers, on schools, on LGBT Americans, I think go way too far in the state of Florida. And I think that they are a profound political miscalculation and an overcompensation. He may be trying to win a base, but that base belongs to Donald Trump. And he has sacrificed, I think, the one thing that others may have thought would make him competitive, which is this idea that he would somehow be more rational than Donald Trump, which he isn't.
You know, this is one of the few times that I think AOC might be onto something, right? I do believe that Governor DeSantis, and I'm not joining her in beating on him. No, I'm just making the point here that there's not another governor in this country that has kind of carved out a space for himself as being the anti-woke governor, right? I think that's what DeSantis is, and where he's thrived in that space. However, I will say he's not being that guy on the campaign trail. It's not him versus wokeism. It's him versus Trump. And if you don't take Trump on directly, then you're not taking him on. And I think this is what she's alluding to, and it's what I observe as well. So that's my thought on that. I'd love to get your thoughts on that as we move forward. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And also wanted to bring you to a little bit of a lighter story. And this is an interesting one. And I will put this out on the social media so you can see it because it's fascinating to me. Burger King's new real cheeseburger. So it's called, quote unquote, real cheeseburger. 20 slices of cheese are included in this sandwich. Yep, not kidding. 20 slices of cheese. Now, this was released in Bangkok. Burger King's causing a big stir in Thailand with its new offering, a burger with no meat and a ton of cheese. I mean, it looks like a cheese burger, a cheese sandwich, right? I mean, it's just absolutely insane here. The item launched on their menus just this past Sunday, and they reduced the price. Just, obviously introductory rate and all that. And compared with the usual price, it's quickly going viral on social media. So we shall see what happens with the full trajectory of this. I don't want to ruin the name here. I'm not going to misgender the cheeseburger. It's called the real cheeseburger. And it's literally one slice of cheese after another slice of cheese. If you like cheese, go for it. I like the actual burger, and they took that away when they replaced it with this thing with tons and tons and tons of cheese. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. Folks, give us a call. The number, if you want to get through, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is the phone number. And we're going to continue our conversation straight ahead, as well as anything you want to talk about. And remember, if you missed any of our guests at any point on this program, you can go to the website, Rich Valdez, America at Night, richvaldezamericaatnight.com, and you can get pretty much everything there, right? You can get the latest shows. You can get anything that we have archived on there. It's available. You can also subscribe to the podcast once you're there, and you could stream it right from the website, or you can wait for it to go, through your application for. Why am I drawing a blank here? For your podcast application, excuse me, and you could click subscribe on that as well. I mean, tons of ways to listen to the show, especially on our website. Anyway, the music means they're kicking me out, but we're coming back. And we're going to continue our discussion. 833-4-Valdez, 833-4-Valdez.
Now, 833-4-Valdez. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
You made all the more historic by the agreement you reached yesterday and the addition of Sweden and how you're going to proceed. I want to thank you for your diplomacy and your courage to take that on. And I want to thank you for your leadership.
All right, that's Joe Biden commenting on NATO. We had some conversation on that earlier. If you missed it, you can always check it out. Once this program ends, it'll automatically be uploaded to our website, richvaldezamericaatnight.com. Let's hit the phones, get your opinions on things. Let's go to Ken, Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, how are we doing tonight?
Wonderful. Thank God, Ken. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Great show as always. You just have really good guests, Rich. You really
Thanks.
do.
I appreciate that. It's very kind.
Well, you're welcome. You deserve it. I was thinking that the reason our great leader, when he's over in Europe, that didn't attend the dinner, the NATO dinner, He conveniently skipped the dinner, and I think he doesn't want to answer any European reporters' questions. And his staff said that he worked over the 4th of July weekend at Camp David, so he's kind of tired.
That's funny. You know, I don't know what to make of this anymore. I'm so embarrassed by the lack of leadership coming out of Washington. I'm so embarrassed by Joe Biden's constant portrayal of weakness on the world stage. And it's very disheartening to say the least. Ken, I don't know what to do. What do you recommend?
Well, Rich, you know the Chinese and the Russians are just laughing at us. They're just laughing at us. That's the way to put it. But I don't know if the answer is, Rich. Our world has been so turned over in the last 10 years. I don't know, up from down and down from up almost. But I got a couple other little quick things I want to say.
Sure, go right ahead.
That Marine in
Camp
California
Pendleton.
that had a 14... Yes, Camp Pendleton. So there was a 14-year-old in the barracks. I always was under the impression that they slept with a group of men in a barrack, that they didn't have single barracks.
I don't know. I don't know where she was meeting up with this person, or how, if they had her sequestered or kidnapped or hiding. I have no idea. I just find it, and that was an ABC News report. I don't know the ins and outs. I do know that it's a crazy story, that a girl that's been missing for a while is identified as being there. And I think, man, this is definitely a tough position for one to be in particular for the young lady that is being held presumably against her will. So as I learn more, you guys will learn more. I'll keep you up to speed on it. But fascinating story. I think you're spot on there. We have, if nothing else, we have a lot of questions that we need answers to. Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it. Big shout out to everybody on WILS. And let's see, where do we go from here? We go to Gainesville, Ohio, WSOY. Let's check in with Paul on WSOY. Go right ahead, Paul.
Yeah, by the way, I'm streaming, Rich. The radio station I used to listen to doesn't play it anymore. They have that guy talking about money, which is not very interesting because it's anybody that has over $1 million. Yeah, boring.
Gotcha.
So anyway,
Gotcha.
I'd like to
welcome
talk about
back,
that.
Paul.
Thank you. What's Burger King going to call this? The real cheeseburger? Because
The real, quote unquote, real cheeseburger.
Yeah, why don't you just throw some whipped cream on top of it there, Burger King? I mean, come on. If America isn't obese enough as it is, that chaps my behind. But anyway, and I wanted to comment on one more thing with the AOC. I heard her say that she might want to go into teaching. Rich, I mean, this is no offense to anybody, but she'd be on the short bus, dude. Because this girl, this drives me crazy. I cannot take her. And, I wish she would drop out of politics. Her and all those crazy, what do they call that? That squad that she's got, they call them the squad.
Oh, yeah,
or
the
something
squad.
like that. Yeah, why don't they all just drop out of politics? Because they literally sound stupid. I mean, if you think that Donald Trump does not have a chance to win this presidential election, well, then I think you're crazy. Because, Joe Biden, look at him. He's walking in front of the king over there. I can't remember what
King Charles.
King Charles. He should have walked beside him. And I know Donald Trump did it. And boy, he got a lot of cloth from that.
He sure
But
did.
now you never hear a thing about Joe Biden doing it. So I just think we have a very uneven political system right now. I don't know what the answer is, but I'll listen to the Rich Valdez. Oh, I messed it up. The Rich Valdez show and hear the whole truth. And I also like that Blaine Holt. Hey, buddy, you should run for president. And that's about all.
Blaine Holt, isn't he terrific?
Rich. Yeah, he sure is. Man, he makes sense. He makes a ton of sense.
He does. One of the few out there really knows this stuff and is able to make it make a lot of sense. Paul, great points. First of all, thanks for your kind words. I appreciate it. And I think you're right. AOC being a teacher, that's a little bit suspect, right? What is exactly is she teaching us? And then we go beyond that. We look at what's happening with NATO and whatnot. Interesting, right? It's a very interesting place. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, which is why I try to bring in the experts from different areas, because, you know, as much as we watch the news and we are armchair quarterbacks ourselves, it takes somebody who's been there multiple times and has that type of muscle memory, right, if you will, to really, I think, break it down in a way that makes the most sense, both in a political situation, a dangerous situation, whatever situation you're in, they're able to respond accordingly. And I don't think that's the case in New York City or in other big cities across the country. So ultimately, whether it's New York City, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's Russia, whether it's AOC being a teacher, right? You put it all together and you think, man, this is a interesting situation for us to be in. And I don't know that I have the answer to that one either. But I've got New York City on my mind because I was in the city earlier today, and I was just thinking of all the things that I saw there and thinking, it doesn't seem to be getting better. It seems to be getting worse, just like things are getting seemingly worse in Ukraine. So take that for what it's worth. Anyway, more to come straight ahead. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Any update on the investigation into the cocaine at the White House? The Secret Service indicated if they're closer to...
Yeah, I don't have any updates. As you know, as you just mentioned, Secret Service is under their purview. They are certainly investigating the situation. I just don't have anything updated. I would refer you to the Secret Service on that particular question.
That's Karine Jean-Pierre, again, just running away from the truth, not answering what happened with this cocaine that was found in the White House, whose it is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, listen, the White House isn't the only place that's in a shambles. It really isn't. There's other places. We just talked about New York City, but there's more, right? Los Angeles is out of control. They just implemented the zero bail policy that was reinstated back in May. And the rapper, 50 Cent, he says that it's over, right? That it's, let me see if I got the quote correct right here. LA is finished after they go back to this no bail policy. And I agree with him. I think we've seen it happen, like I mentioned, in New York, and we're seeing in a lot of places, the domestic onslaught of people just destroying their own city. And it's sad. It's very sad. But that's the situation that we're in. And 50 Cent, he takes to social media and he makes these comments. He's 48 years old now, by the way, Curtis Jackson. And he says, watch how bad it gets out there, shaking his head. He also included in his comments that removing bail for individuals charged with misdemeanors or nonviolent felonies, similar to the controversial reforms in New York, would eventually be the downfall of the city. And yeah, I think so. When people know they're not going to be arrested, or if an arrest is not something where you're held till you can bail yourself out, but something that you can just becomes kind of flippant, and that's exactly the attitude people will have. And it's a shame that you have it takes a rapper from from the East Coast to call it out on the West Side. But it's going to happen here too, and it's happening, right? And we've seen it happen. I think there's some brave men and women out there that are trying to slow things down and stem the rise in crime, and kudos to them for doing that. But we are in rough shape. And when the rapper 50 Cent comes out and says, hey, look, this is where we're at, we're in really bad shape, you know that we're in really bad shape. Anyway, we're going to continue with your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. And I want to remind you that there is a new verdict that has been issued on Ring cameras. I'll get to what that verdict is and the new description attached to the Ring cameras when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And Ring cameras are apparently racist. The company putting that out there, according to Wired magazine, they want you to know that Ring cameras are racist and you shouldn't buy them. Yep. Listen to this. This is a tweet from Zaid Jalani. It says, a few days after a Ring camera caught several teens on camera confessing to a shooting and killing a Lyft driver in Washington, D.C., Wired says they don't recommend Ring cameras because they let you easily send video to the police. And this should be more difficult, right? Again, after making an opinion or posting an opinion about this particular situation, I'm floored by this. That this thing catches some teens killing someone in Washington, D.C., and they're like, yeah, no, you know, we're going to pass on this. This is not a good thing. It's racist. We don't want them. I think that's out of control personally. Anyway, I'd like to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Robert, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Go right ahead.
Okay, Rich, I'll comment on that, and also on the 14-year-old girl who went to the Marine barracks too,
sure,
if you'd like. Okay, with regard to the camera, I think it's wonderful that they got that on a camera, that there's a guy confessing to having murdered somebody like that. That's wonderful. I mean, that brings the murder rate down. That's good for all of us. There's nobody who doesn't benefit from that. We should find a way to keep that going, I think. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I think it's great. I just think the idea that they're saying we shouldn't have these cameras because they're racist is crazy. And it's crazy to say the camera's racist. Obviously, it's because of who they caught on the camera. And it just, to me, is more of the same when we're dealing with the radicals on the left. But listen to this. They make the assertion here that the Ring camera allows its owners to send video that they've captured with their Ring video doorbell camera and outdoor security cameras to law enforcement. This is a feature unique to Ring. Even Nextdoor, a competitor, removed its forward to police feature back in 2020, which allowed Nextdoor users to forward their own safety posts to local law enforcement agencies. If a crime had been committed, law enforcement should obtain a warrant to access a civilian's video footage. Now, these are two separate arguments, right? Nobody's saying that you should not obtain a warrant to get a video. What the case they're making is that it's inherently racist because in that story that I'm sharing with you, there is some ambiguity here, right? They're saying, well, because somebody of color got in trouble, this is clearly racist. I'm thinking, no, that's crazy. I mean, you take it to the tape, you take it to the tape. If you have a tape and it shows someone of color breaking the law, that's what it shows. If it shows someone that's white or Asian or anything else, it's going to show what it is. And this is where I have a problem with people that just refuse to accept the truth. You have to accept the truth. When you start to embrace this idea of relativism, Robert, and everybody else, honestly, and it's not directed towards you, just we happen to be on the phone together, you start to create your own truth. And as you create your own truth, you can create whatever truth you want, but there has to be some reality to it. And I think this is where they go off the reservation here, where they're making stuff up and it just isn't the case. So yeah, Ring cameras are not racist. And if you have a property and you have the space for them, have as many Ring cameras as you like. I think it's a good thing.
You're right. I mean, after all, it brings up the specter that the policeman comes over, puts the handcuffs around the Ring camera, and hauls the Ring camera off to jail for being racist. You know what I mean? It's that insane.
I get it. And what was the other point you wanted to make?
The other point I was trying to make is that 14-year-old girl who went over to the Marine Corps barracks, well, after all, she's the one who got on the computer, and she's the one who found that guy, and she's the one who walked over there or got herself over there, and she's the one who did the overnighters there or whatever she was doing there, and it doesn't sound like she was doing it against her will by any means. So why does everybody presume it's against her will, and why does everybody presume she's the victim or anything like that? It doesn't sound like to me like she was the victim. You know?
I'll say this. Look, I think if you're driving a car down the road and a kid jumps out in front of your car and you run the kid over, the question of fault becomes secondary to the fact that a kid just got hit, right? And when it comes to a 14-year-old girl, I don't think that I'm going to fault a 14-year-old girl for doing, and again, I don't know that she went of her own volition or not. I don't know. It says that she'd been missing for quite a while before getting there, 2 weeks. She was already missing for 2 weeks. So I think it becomes a question of, are we going to blame the victim for being a victim, for being coerced? How, why? I think there's a lot of facts that we still have to find out. To put the blame squarely upon a 14-year-old girl, I think I'd have to think long and hard before I did something like that. Now, if she shot somebody in the head, I'd say, look, she thought that out, and now it's clear. But something like sneaking out, or maybe we don't know if she snuck out or not. So I think it's premature to make an assessment like that. But interesting conversation nonetheless. Thank you, Robert, for your call. Big shout out to everybody in South Carolina on WTMA. Great station, great morning show there, by the way. And we're going to continue our conversations and great radio programming right here on this station. Until then, until the next time, hasta la próxima. I am Rich Valdez. Take care, good night, and God bless. And we're going to do it all again tomorrow.